Representative Fine, you're recognized in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sometimes when we have debates in the Florida House on certain bills, I sometimes feel like I'm hearing people debate a different bill that actually exists. And I want to talk about the bill, and I want to tell a couple of stories, and I want to see if I can perhaps try to bring together some of the thoughts that have been shared. The idea that people seem to be most focused on, this bill says you can't do 8 things. It prevents sort of 8 teachings, if you will. They're lines 210 to 237 of the bill. And the one that's gotten the most attention is the 7th one. It says basically you're not going to be able to train or instruct that a person should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race, color, national origin, or sex. Sure, they can't make you feel it, but they shouldn't instruct it. And so it reminds me of a story. I'm also an only one up here. I'm the only Jew that sits up here. And I reminded as a 9-year-old boy, my father, who was a professor, got a teaching fellowship in Germany. It was 1983. The Holocaust was that's half in between now and when the Holocaust had happened, less than 40 years after it had happened. It's longer since then than it was when I was there. So my father, 4 Jews, we go to Germany. My father works at the Max Planck Institute doing a teaching fellowship. And a man who was not another academic. He was sort of an administrator, maintenance guy by the name of Helmut Rufer, came and sort of adopted my family. And I always was, I couldn't figure it out. Why? He was much older than my father, much older than my family. My dad and he didn't work together. And my parents couldn't figure it out either. And one night, we were sitting there, and my dad let me hear these things. And I knew about the Holocaust. I'd read the Diary of Anne Frank when I was very young. I knew I wasn't immune. I knew where I was going. And my father asked him one night, why have you done this? Why have you taken us under your wing? And his name, Helmut Rufer, said, because when I was 13 years old, the Nazis told me to stand on a bridge and fight the Americans. Now, he wasn't working at a concentration camp, but he felt guilt of what he was asked to do as a 13-year-old boy. And my father looked at him and said, you are not responsible for the sins of your father. And this man in his 60s broke down, weeping, because he had felt this guilt over something that was not his fault. See, we've done bad things, but there are people who should be blamed for them, and they're the people who did them. So I have a challenge to my colleagues on this bill, and I've made the same challenge to everyone who's come to me to talk about this or any other bill dealing with this subject. There are 8 things that this bill says we don't want you to do. And I'm lucky. I have representatives like Representative Williams and Representative Valdez, Representative Bush. They serve on my committee that I chair, and they provide amazing perspective. We get along a lot more than you all would realize. And my challenge to all of you between now and when this bill is on the floor is tell me which of these 8 things you think should be taught in school.